My name is Evelyn Marlowe. I'm 68 years old. I used to be a nurse. 35 years of midnight shifts, double shifts. Holidays missed and backs rubbed while children slept through fevers and husbands slept through everything else. Now I'm retired, widowed. I live in a two-bedroom house at the edge of a quiet town in Vermont, where the mailbox leans slightly left and no one calls unless they want something. They said, "Join us, Grandma. We want you here for Christmas." I got here, waited, called. Then I saw. I was standing outside Gate 4 of Houston Intercontinental Airport, my suitcase by my side, a tote bag slung over my shoulder, and in my hand, a small cream-colored handkerchief embroidered with the letter S, Sophie. My granddaughter. She used it once to wipe tears at 13 when her mother forgot to pick her up from school. She said I was the only place that ever felt safe. I believed her. The airport around me buzzed with joy. Kids ran ahead of parents. Couples kissed long and soft. Teenagers with oversized backpacks called out Grandma, and women with silver hair rushed forward, faces bright, arms open. Me, I stood still, waiting for someone who said they wanted me there. The flight had landed 38 minutes ago. I checked the app twice. Then again. No messages, no missed calls. But earlier this week, my daughter-in-law Diana sent a text. "Can't wait to see you here, Mom. Everything's ready. The kids are excited." There was a heart emoji at the end, that small, stupid symbol people use when they want to feel warm without actually being present. I replied. Landed at 5:32, waiting near Gate 4. So excited to see you all. I stared at the message for 10 full minutes. No scene. No reply. I didn't sit down. I couldn't. Sitting would make it real. Sitting would make it look like I knew I wasn't going to be claimed. That maybe I wasn't invited at all. Instead, I kept standing. Just another elderly woman at arrivals. Not smiling. Not crying. Just waiting. And then my phone buzzed. Not a call, not a text. A notification from Facebook. For a second, my heart did something foolish. It hoped. I opened the app. There it was. A photo posted 7 minutes earlier. My son Jacob, still wearing that plaid flannel shirt I sent him last Christmas. Diana beside him, hair curled perfectly, like she never ran late for anything except me. Their kids, Jonah and Lila, holding up sparkling cider glasses. Candles, a roasted turkey, wrapped gifts already stacked in the corner, a pie I didn't bake, and Sophie, my Sophie, barely in the frame. The caption read, "Full house, full hearts, Merry Christmas from all of us." All of them. All of them were there. And I wasn't. There wasn't even an empty chair at the table. No sign that a plate had been forgotten. No space that looked like someone might still walk through the door. It was as if I never existed. I didn't drop the phone. I didn't gasp. No dramatic soundtrack played in my head. I just stood a little straighter, tucked the handkerchief back into my coat pocket, pulled the suitcase handle upright, and walked, not toward the taxi line, not toward baggage claim, just forward. Because, in that moment, the truth sank in. A quiet, heavy truth I hadn't been invited to Christmas. I had been managed. There was a difference. And I knew from the way no one was running toward me, from the way they smiled in that photo without a second thought, from the way my phone stayed silent, even as the post got likes, that I could wait another 38 minutes, or 38 hours. They weren't coming. They never were. And maybe, deep down, they never meant for me to come at all. I wasn't lost. I was left. There's a difference. Lost is when someone is looking for you, when there's a search, a question, a hope. Left is when they've already moved on. The curb outside the terminal was crowded. Cold air snuck under my collar as I stepped outside, my suitcase wheels clattering behind me. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. A yellow cab pulled up nearby. The driver leaned out his window. He was older, maybe in his 70s, with skin like worn leather and eyes that didn't miss much. "You need help, ma'am?" he asked. I paused. So many ways to answer that. But instead, I offered a soft smile and said, "I just need somewhere with pie." And no one lying to me. His eyebrows lifted just a little, like he understood more than I gave him credit for. He didn't ask questions, just popped the trunk. "Hop in. I know just the place." I slid into the back seat. The vinyl was cracked and the heater rattled a little, but it was warm. I watched the terminal fade behind us through the rear window. All that glass and steel so full of motion. Reunions, homecomings, and yet somehow no room for me. The driver didn't talk much. I appreciated that. The radio hummed with soft jazz. My hands rested in my lap, still holding the handkerchief with the embroidered S. I thought about calling again. Thought about texting Sophie. But I didn't want her to lie for them. And I didn't want to hear another sorry that didn't come with a seat at the table. The cab turned onto a quiet road lined with holiday lights and shuttered businesses. Then we pulled into a small parking lot beside a squat building with fogged-up windows and a flickering neon sign, "Mary's Pie and Coffee." The driver glanced back at me. "Best pecan slice this side of Texas." I nodded. "Perfect." He helped me with my bag, gave me a gentle nod, and pulled away without waiting for a tip. I stood for a moment, letting the warmth of the diner spill toward me through the glass. Inside, I could see booths, a counter, paper snowflakes taped to the walls. No one knew me there, and that, for the first time in a long time, felt like a gift. I opened the door and walked in. 2 weeks ago, my phone rang at 8:42 p.m. That alone should have told me something was off. Jacob never called at night. If he called at all, it was on birthdays, and even then, it was usually a text. But that evening, my screen lit up with his name, and for a foolish moment, my heart fluttered. "Mom," he said, too cheerful. "Hey, you doing anything for Christmas?" I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. I could hear voices in the background, Diana's faint and clipped. Some kind of music. Not much I said. Just me and the radio. I might bake a pie if my hands cooperate. He laughed, too loud, too forced. "Well, listen, the kids were asking about you, and Diana thought it might be nice if you joined us this year. Sophie's flying in. Everyone will be there. Wouldn't feel right without you." That line. Wouldn't feel right without you. I don't know why that one got me. Maybe because it had been so long since anyone said they wanted me somewhere, for no reason other than wanting me. Not to babysit, not to help with carpool or bring a dish. Just be there. "Of course," I said quietly. "I'd love that." "Great," Jacob replied. "I'll let Diana know. She'll handle the details. We'll see you soon." We hung up. No offer to book the ticket. No mention of covering costs. And I didn't ask. That night, I sat in my kitchen with the lights dimmed and my tea cooling untouched. In the drawer next to the fridge, I kept an envelope labeled Roof Fund. A few $100s I'd been putting aside each month since August. The shingles over the guest room had started curling. Water spots had appeared along the ceiling. I opened the envelope, counted the bills, ran my finger across the edges. And the next morning, I used that money to book a flight. $386 round trip, another $26 for a checked bag, and $9.99 for seat selection. It felt extravagant, reckless. But the idea of seeing Sophie again, of hearing her laugh across the table, made it feel worth it. A few hours later, I got a text from Diana. "We're excited to have you. Let me know your flight info when it's booked. We'll be there to pick you up." I read it twice, smiled, replied immediately. "Flying in on the 23rd, landing at 5:32 p.m. Can't wait to see you all." There was no reply. At the time, I didn't think much of it. People get busy, plans get hectic. But looking back now, standing in the warmth of that pie shop with a slice waiting and my suitcase at my feet, I wonder if Diana ever planned to read that message at all. The day before my flight, I laid everything out on the dining table like I used to when the kids were little. Back when packing for a trip meant making sure no one forgot their stuffed animal or retainer. This time, it was just me. But the ritual felt the same. I started with the handkerchiefs. 3 of them, each one stitched by hand, pale cotton delicate thread. I had to wear my magnifying glasses to finish the edges properly. One with a tiny dinosaur embroidered in green for Jonah, one with pink flowers for Lila, and one for Sophie. Hers, of course, was cream with a small gold S in the corner. I folded them slowly, sprinkled a hint of lavender water between the layers so they'd smell like something old and kind. Then came the cookies. Almond crescent cookies dusted in powdered sugar, packed in 2 layers inside a red tin with a snowflake on the lid. I wrapped the tin in parchment, just in case the baggage handlers didn't believe in Christmas spirit. Lastly, the books. I still had the worn-out paperbacks Sophie loved when she was younger, The Secret Garden. Its pages were soft at the corners, dog-eared from too many reads. I tucked it in with the others. 2 more books for Jonah and Lila, stories about kindness animals, the sort of thing you hope still holds their attention. I added a card for each one. No money. Just a short note in my neatest handwriting. I labeled everything. Small post-its in cursive, Jonah, Lila, Sophie, as if labeling them meant I belonged in their lives. The suitcase was older but reliable. I packed carefully, placing the gifts between sweaters and scarves, padding the cookies with socks. I left out one cardigan to wear on the plane. Dark blue. The elbows were thinning. I liked it anyway. There was a quietness in the room as I zipped it shut. Not loneliness exactly. More like the hush of a chapel. The kind of silence that asks you to pay attention. I double-checked my flight details. Printed my boarding pass just in case. Slipped the paper into my purse beside my wallet and a photograph of Sophie and me from 3 years ago, her arms wrapped around my waist, both of us in aprons. I placed the suitcase by the front door and sat on the edge of my bed, looking at it. I'd packed like someone going home, but deep down, something whispered I might be going for the last time I was ever needed. And I listened. Because when you've been invisible long enough, even the smallest goodbye starts to feel permanent. Maybe they're just late. That's what I told myself when the arrivals board changed my flight status from landed to baggage claim. Maybe the traffic was bad. Maybe Lila got carsick on the way. Maybe Jonah forgot his jacket and they had to turn around. I've always been good at giving people reasons to disappoint me. It's a skill I perfected over the years. Quiet justifications, gentle excuses. It helped me sleep. I checked my phone again. Still no reply to my text. Still no missed calls. No, we're on our way or running behind, or even a thumbs-up emoji. I clicked into the message thread and stared at the last one I'd sent. Landed at 5:32, waiting near gate 4. So excited to see you all. The message hadn't even been marked. Read. I looked at the clock. 6:02 p.m. It wasn't that late. 30 minutes isn't abandonment. It's a delay. I shifted the tote bag on my shoulder, moved closer to the automatic doors to avoid blocking foot traffic. The airport was alive with holiday noise. A toddler in footy pajamas screamed joyfully and ran into her grandfather's arms. A woman with graying curls clutched a bouquet of red carnations and wept into the shoulder of her son. People smiled. People reunited. And I waited. By 6:12, I called Jacob. Straight to voicemail. I hung up before the beep. Then I tried Diana. Her phone rang once, then twice, then voicemail. I hesitated. Called again. Same result. Maybe she turned it off during dinner. Maybe they were wrapping gifts and didn't hear the phone. Maybe. At 6:24, I walked toward the sliding glass doors, letting the cold bite at my face. I needed the air. The truth is harder to ignore when it stings your cheeks. I looked down the line of cars, hoping to recognize their silver SUV. It wasn't there. I waited another 15 minutes, then another 10. At 6:49, I texted again. Still waiting at gate 4. Let me know if plans changed. Still no response. Still not seen. I sat on the bench outside the terminal. The handkerchief was still in my pocket, the S stitched tight and small. My fingers found it without looking. I rubbed the edge like a prayer bead, grounding myself in the tiny work I'd done for someone who may never ask about it. I looked up at the dark sky. Planes flew overhead, blinking against the night. Maybe they thought I was arriving tomorrow. Maybe there was a mix-up. Maybe Diana got the date wrong. But I had sent the confirmation. She responded. I knew she saw it. And still, I waited. People passed by with purpose, with arms full of family, with grins and luggage and plans. And I sat quiet, invisible. But even invisibility can't hide you from the truth forever. The truth starts as a whisper. Maybe they forgot. Then it sharpens. Maybe they chose not to come. Then it lands. Maybe they never planned to. And you feel it in your bones. The shift from hope to understanding. From waiting to knowing. At 7:03, I stopped pretending. I stood up from the bench outside gate 4. My legs were stiff. My back ached. But it wasn't the cold or the sitting that hurt. It was the weight of clarity setting in. I didn't cry. That would have felt like something had just broken. But this felt old, familiar. I opened my phone again. Just habit by that point. Still no messages, no calls, nothing marked read. But there was a new notification on Facebook. Diana had posted. It wasn't the kind of post you expect from someone who said, "We'll be there to pick you up." It was a photo. The living room was decorated perfectly. Garland lined the fireplace. Twinkle lights glowed behind frosted windows. The same nativity set I gave them years ago sat on the mantel, Mary missing her hand, Joseph missing his staff, both still there, like me, damaged but present. And there they were, Jacob on the couch laughing, Lila in a red velvet dress holding a gingerbread cookie, Jonah cross-legged on the rug, unwrapping a game, Sophie in the back half smiling, holding up a mug of cocoa like she didn't know which world she belonged to anymore. And beside them, a woman I didn't know, silver hair in a neat bob, a wine glass in her hand, wearing an apron that looked suspiciously like one I'd sewn for Diana 5 years ago. She was seated in my chair, the one I always used when I visited, a little lower to the ground with a pillow behind the back. I bought it myself and had it delivered to their house after my hip surgery. She was smiling. Diana was leaning toward her. Jacob had his hand resting on her shoulder. The caption read, "Full house, full hearts. To all the moms out there, Merry Christmas. To all the moms. I felt something shift in my chest, like a string had been snipped quietly. Not torn, not yanked, just released. I zoomed in on the photo. That woman had a necklace I recognized. One of those mother-of-pearl lockets with grandkid initials etched inside. I had one too. Mine was in the drawer back home right next to my pension statements and extra batteries. My hand slowly slid back into my coat pocket. I felt the handkerchief again. S for Sophie. But Sophie wasn't in my arms. She wasn't running toward me at the gate. She wasn't texting to ask where I was. She was there, present, smiling. And I was, somewhere outside the frame, outside the house, outside the caption, outside the heart. I had not just been left behind. I had been replaced. They didn't forget. They chose. I scrolled through the comments. Looks like a beautiful evening, love seeing family together. Your mom is glowing. She wasn't their mom. But no one knew that. No one corrected them. And the likes kept climbing. I stood still, the noise of the airport fading to a hum behind me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger required energy I no longer had. I just felt removed, uninvited, unnecessary. There wasn't a single trace of me in that home anymore. Not in the photo, not in the caption, not in the conversation. Full house, full hearts. But where was I? The cab pulled up just as I was starting to feel the cold in my bones. It wasn't the kind of cold that comes from wind or December air. It was the kind that crept up from the inside out. The kind that came when you knew no one was coming for you. The driver had a name tag on the dashboard, Walter. He was older, maybe my age, or a bit more, with a white beard that hadn't been trimmed recently, and eyes that carried stories he'd never tell unless asked. You look like you've had a day, he said gently as he stepped out to take my suitcase. I didn't answer right away, just nodded and climbed into the back seat. Once he was behind the wheel, he didn't start the car right away. He just looked at me in the rearview mirror and said, "People forget the most important things on the days they're supposed to remember." That line, that quiet sentence, it sat with me. He didn't ask questions, didn't need a story, and I didn't feel like giving one. He simply started the engine and drove. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that makes you feel like you're not alone, even when you don't want to talk. As the airport disappeared in the rear view, so did the photo in my mind. The one with the stranger in my chair. The one with my son's hand on someone else's shoulder. Where are we going? I asked, my voice softer than I meant it to be. Mary's Pie and Coffee, he replied. It's nothing fancy, but they don't mind if you sit a while. Good pie. Better silence. We pulled up 10 minutes later to a squat brick diner with fogged windows and a red neon sign flickering faintly above the door. Open 24/7. He helped me with my suitcase, even though I told him he didn't have to. I reached for my wallet. He shook his head. Merry Christmas, ma'am. I stared at him, heart caught somewhere between gratitude and ache. Thank you, I said. 2 words that felt too small. He smiled. The kind ones always get left out of the pictures. Doesn't mean they don't matter. And just like that, he was gone. I stood outside the door for a beat, letting the soft glow of the diner lights wash over me like a quiet welcome. Inside, a waitress in a Santa hat poured coffee into chipped mugs. A man sat alone at the counter, reading the newspaper steam rising from his bowl of chili. A family of 3 shared a booth in the back, the child coloring quietly as the parents sipped cocoa. No one looked up when I entered. No one asked why I was alone. No one made space for me at their table, but no one made me feel like I didn't belong either. I chose a corner booth by the window, dropped my coat beside me, rested my bag against the wall. When the waitress came over, she smiled without pushing. "Coffee?" she asked. I nodded. "Want a slice of something sweet? Do you have pecan best in town?" Then, "Yes, please." The pie came warm. The coffee came strong. And for the first time that day, I exhaled fully. Not because I was happy, not because anything had been fixed, but because in that quiet booth under soft lights and no expectations, I didn't have to smile. I didn't have to explain. I could just be. Mary's pie and coffee wasn't home, but it was something. And for tonight, that was enough. The pie sat in front of me, still steaming, a thick slice of pecan golden brown with sugared edges, the scent wrapping around me like a memory. I stared at it for a long while. Not because I wasn't hungry, I was, but because it felt unfamiliar. Not the pie itself, but the fact that it was mine. No one had asked me to bake it. No one had requested it with a phone call that started with, "Hey Mom, you still make that one pie we love." No one was waiting for the first slice. There were no smaller plates lined up, no grandchildren with sticky fingers hovering too close to the oven. No one pretending to help just so they could sneak a pecan. It was just me. Me and this pie. And it was the first time in 60 years I hadn't baked it for someone else. I picked up the fork. My fingers paused, hovering above the crust. It crumbled gently when I pressed down. I slowed. Not for drama, not for effect, but because something about that moment needed space. The first bite was warm, caramel rich, a little too sweet, but in the best way. The kind of sweet that sticks to your teeth and makes you close your eyes without meaning to. I sat there, fork still in hand, my throat tight. Not from sadness, but from something older. Something I couldn't name. Gratitude, maybe. Grief, probably. Relief, absolutely. I swallowed, and for the first time all day, I felt something settle in my chest. I wasn't feeding anyone. I wasn't serving. I wasn't asking. "Did you like it?" Or, "Want another slice?" I was simply eating. For me. I didn't owe this pie to a birthday, a school play, a holiday tradition. I didn't have to make conversation. I didn't have to clean afterward. I sat. I ate. And no one needed me to ask a second time. The waitress passed by, once smiled without speaking, then moved on. She left the coffee pot near my elbow, like she knew I might want more, but wouldn't want to ask. The radio in the corner hummed a soft jazz rendition of Silent Night. It felt ironic. The night hadn't been silent, but this moment was. Deliciously, completely silent. In that stillness, something inside me loosened, something that had been holding on too tightly for too long. All those years of cutting the smallest slice for myself, of scraping the filling from the edge because someone else wanted more crust, of staying up late to clean while everyone else slept off their sugar highs. I had thought that was love, and maybe it was. But this bite that I didn't owe to anyone, this felt like something else. Respect, from me to me. I poured another inch of coffee into my mug, stirred in a splash of milk. I didn't rush. I didn't check my phone. The world didn't need me in that moment. And for the first time in a long time, neither did I. I just needed this pie. Warm, sweet, mine. Motel 12 sat right off the freeway. A 2-story building with a flickering sign and parking lot lit by buzz-humming yellow lights. Walter had dropped me off with the same quiet kindness he picked me up with. No questions, just, "They'll have a room. And you'll have a door to close." I thanked him again, He tipped his cap and left before I could say more. The woman at the front desk handed me a key card and a paper map of the property. "Second floor end unit," she said. "Ice machine's broken. Vending machine works if you hit it hard enough." The room was clean in the way. Budget motels try to be corners scrubbed, but stained carpet vacuumed but threadbare. The bedspread had a faded floral pattern, and the pillows were stiff with optimism. It smelled like lemon cleaner, the kind that tries too hard. But under that, beneath the bleach and synthetic citrus, there was something honest. Maybe the smell of heat against old drapes or the quiet hum of a place no one had cried in recently. I dropped my bag, sat on the edge of the bed. The weight of the day pressed against my shoulders. I didn't turn on the TV. Instead, I pulled out my notebook, the small one with the cracked leather cover and soft-lined pages. I'd brought it in case I had time to journal, or reflect, or write down the funny things Jonah said. But now it would hold something else. I uncapped the pen and for a moment just let my hand rest on the page. Then I wrote, "I am not the leftover. I am the used-up part they don't need anymore." The words hit harder than I expected. My eyes welled. I blinked them back. I didn't want to cry. I wanted to document. So I started a list, not of complaints, of facts. Paid off Jacob's student loans. $27,000 over 6 years. Covered Diana's dental surgery when her insurance refused. 3,800. Watched Sophie every Friday for 4 years so they could go to therapy. Free. Canceled my trip to visit Helen in Arizona because Lila had the flu and they needed help. Gave up the antique vanity my mother left me so Diana could refinish it for the guest room. Never saw it again. Sold my wedding ring, 3 small diamonds, in a gold band so Jacob could put down a deposit on their first home. He said, "I'll buy you a new one someday." He didn't. Hosted 10 straight Christmas dinners until they decided I deserved a break, which meant I stopped being invited. I paused. The ink was smudging slightly under my fingertips. The list wasn't about guilt. It wasn't even about resentment. It was about recognizing something I hadn't let myself say out loud. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd simply moved on from needing me. And instead of saying that outright, they'd masked it with warm texts and polite photos. They'd called it space or new traditions or letting us take care of things now. But they hadn't taken care of me. They'd taken my place. There's a difference. I closed the notebook, not because I was done writing, but because I'd written enough for now. The room was quiet, still. The kind of still that echoed inside your chest. I laid back against the stiff pillows, pulled the blanket over my knees. Somewhere they were probably doing dishes, passing out dessert. Somewhere someone else was probably kissing Sophie goodnight. But here in this motel room that smelled like fake lemon and real loneliness, I had myself, and my own name on a reservation, and my own list of things no one ever thanked me for, and maybe, for the first time in years, my own permission to stop giving. There was a time when I kept the door open for everyone, light on in the porch, coffee always brewing, a bed made up with fresh sheets and lavender tucked beneath the pillows. I was the one who remembered birthdays, stocked the freezer with their favorite casseroles, packed lunches for road trips, even when I wasn't going. I used to believe love meant being available. Always. That showing up no matter what was the job I was born for. I thought if I kept saying yes, eventually someone would notice. That I was tired, that I was lonely, that I was maybe getting old, but no one ever asked. And eventually, I stopped offering. That shift didn't happen loudly. It didn't come with slammed doors or tearful confessions. It started the morning I woke up and couldn't feel my left arm. I had been reaching for my slippers. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor, the side of my face tingling, heart beating faster than it should have. I knew what it was. I'd read enough, heard enough. I told myself not to panic. I crawled to the phone, called 911, told them my name and my address, said I think I'm having a stroke. Then I hung up. When the EMTs came, I was still on the floor. I hadn't even cried. They asked if I had anyone to call. I said no. They're busy. I spent 3 days in the hospital. Room 214. Window facing the parking lot. A nurse named Camille who braided my hair because I couldn't lift my arm. No calls. No visitors. No one asking when I'd be discharged or if I needed someone to pick me up. It was Mrs. Langston, my neighbor, who brought orange juice the morning I came home. She didn't even ask what happened, just said you looked pale through the window. I drank it slowly. It tasted like kindness. I never told the kids. Not because I wanted to protect them, but because I realized they hadn't noticed I was gone. And that hurt more than the numbness ever did. In that motel room now, I sat on the edge of the bed, again notebook open. I wrote, I was the gatekeeper of love. And they let me stand there alone. I had guarded the threshold, welcomed every arrival, held the weight of every secret, kept every memory, every recipe, every disappointment. And when I was too tired to keep watch, no one noticed. That's the part that doesn't get talked about. How we teach ourselves to disappear gently. How the mothers fade first. Not because they're unloved, but because they are assumed. And when we are assumed long enough, we become invisible. But tonight, I wasn't holding the door open for anyone. I wasn't waiting for someone to ring the bell or say, "Sorry, Mom, I lost track of time." I was sitting behind a locked door in a motel with the hum of the highway outside. And for the first time, I felt something like safety. Not happiness, not peace, but safety. From expectation, from performance, from the constant ache of proving I still mattered. I didn't owe them my pain. I didn't owe them my story. But I was going to write it anyway. Not to send, not to frame, not even to read out loud someday, just to remember that I was here, that I kept records, that I mattered even if only in ink. I closed the notebook, ran my hand across the cover, and whispered not to anyone in particular, I am not waiting at the door anymore. The phone rang at 10:42 p.m. I was sitting in the motel chair, knees pulled up, robe over my lap, flipping through a brochure someone had left for local attractions, things like miniature railroads and candle-making classes. I wasn't expecting anyone to call, so when the screen lit up with Sophie's name, I just stared at it for a second. My thumb hovered. I wondered if it was a mistake if she'd pocket-dialed me or meant to call someone else. But the phone rang again, and I answered. Grandma. Her voice wasn't panicked. She wasn't crying. But it trembled around the edges like the words had been held in her throat all day. I swallowed the lump in my own. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. Silence. Then Dad said, "You couldn't come this year, that you had a cold." But I knew it wasn't true. The quiet between us pressed hard. I could have lied, could have spared her what I saw. But something in her voice, steady but hurt, made me realize she wasn't calling for comfort. She was calling for the truth. I came Sophie. She didn't speak, just breathed. I was at the airport. I waited. Pause. I saw the picture. Still, she said nothing. They didn't forget, I added. They just didn't want me there. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter, rawer. Who was that woman? My heart ached at the question. I'd hoped she hadn't noticed. Or maybe believed the story they told. I don't know, I said. Someone they wanted at the table instead. Another pause. I saved a seat for you, she whispered. At the kids' table, but it was still yours. That broke something small and silent inside me. Oh, Sophie. I didn't think you forgot, she said. They told me not to call. Said you were probably asleep. Or busy. Busy. I'd sat on a cold airport bench for hours, spent Christmas Eve eating pie alone in a diner, written a list of every silent thing I'd ever done for them, and they told her I was busy. I closed my eyes, leaned back against the headboard. You did nothing wrong, sweetheart, I said gently. I don't blame you. And I didn't. How could I? Sophie hadn't lied. She'd just been born into a house where truth was wrapped in pretty bows and handed out like favors, only if you asked the right way, only if it didn't rock the tree. In our family, silence had always passed as grace. But it wasn't grace. It was habit. And Sophie, sweet, sharp-eyed Sophie, had broken it with a phone call. I wanted you there, she said. It didn't feel like Christmas without you. I looked across the room at the notebook on the desk. The list. The sentences I hadn't finished. I know, I told her. And that means more than I can say. She was quiet again. Then softly, Are you okay? I thought about lying, saying I was fine, that I had cake or friends, or that I liked motel pillows now. But she deserved truth. I'm okay enough, I said. And I'm safe. That's what matters. We sat in silence a little longer. Not uncomfortable, just knowing. Will you come next year? She asked. I didn't answer right away. Because the answer wasn't simple. I wanted to. For her. But not like this. Not in secret. Not as someone hidden behind false excuses and polite lies. I'll come if I'm invited, honestly, I said. And if I'm wanted, I'll make sure you are, she promised. Her voice, though young, had steel in it. And I believed her. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, baby. When the call ended, I stared at the ceiling for a while. No tears, just breath. The truth was finally spoken. And even if nothing changed tomorrow tonight, Sophie had called my name. And that meant I still existed in someone's story. Not as a guest, not as an obligation, not as a burden, but as hers. It was quiet on the line again. Not the heavy silence from earlier, but a different kind. The kind where something is building, about to be said, and you can feel it before the words come. Then Sophie's voice, soft and careful. Grandma, I want to come be with you. I froze. Not because I didn't want her here, but because I did, desperately. I opened my mouth, then closed it. She continued, her voice a mix of bravery and a child's aching hope. I don't want to stay here tonight. Everyone's acting like nothing's wrong. They're laughing and talking and posting more pictures. But it feels like someone died. That landed like a stone in my chest. I knew that feeling. I'd lived it for years. The kind of grief that creeps in when something invisible breaks, when no one else mourns but you carry the funeral in your ribs. I swallowed. My voice shook, just enough to betray my steadiness. Oh, sweetheart, I wish I could drive to you right now. You don't have to, she said quickly. Dad already left to go pick something up. Mom's putting Jonah to bed. I know how to call a ride share. I have some Christmas money. I can be there in 20 minutes. My eyes darted toward the motel room door, the dull floral chair, the second paper cup on the desk that I hadn't used. I imagined her in it, barefoot probably, hugging her knees, asking if we had any peppermint tea. I looked at the clock. It was late. Too late for a girl her age to sneak out. Too late for what it meant to defy her parents so openly. And yet, it was the right time. Because some moments don't wait for permission. I took a slow breath and said, I have one last piece of pecan pie. A hot tea bag with your name on it. And a spot across from the chessboard, just in case you're brave enough to lose again. She let out a soft laugh through her nose. The kind that almost broke into tears, but didn't. I'm calling the car now, she said. Sophie? I paused. Are you sure? Yes, she said without hesitation. I need to be somewhere where I don't have to pretend. That line, that truth. It echoed something I had written just hours ago. I didn't need applause. I didn't need a grand gesture. I just needed not to be erased. And now my granddaughter, this fierce little soul, was choosing the same thing. To exist, honestly. Even if it came with disapproval. Even if it came with consequences. Text me when you're in the car, I said. I'll keep the lights on. And I'll be waiting by the door. Promise I haven't broken a promise to you yet. Have I? She sniffled. No, ma'am. Then I won't start tonight. The line clicked. I sat in that quiet room, heart pulsing slow and full. I didn't know what would happen next. What Jacob and Diana would do. What story they'd spin to explain Sophie's absence. I didn't even care. Because for the first time in years, someone chose me. Not out of obligation. Not because of tradition. Not for help or money or pie. But because she wanted truth. And she wanted me. I moved around the room quickly, smoothing the second pillow, straightening the chair, wiping down the small motel table. I poured hot water into a clean cup, added a peppermint tea bag, set the last slice of pie on a paper plate, lit the tiny bedside lamp, and waited. Not like at the airport. Not like a woman forgotten. But like someone expecting a guest. A real guest. Someone brave enough to walk away from pretending and toward the one person who never asked her to. The morning after Sophie arrived, I woke up before her. She was curled up on the second bed, wrapped in a worn motel blanket, her long hair spread across the pillow like ribbon. Her breathing was soft, steady. It was the most peace I'd seen on her face in years. I sat at the tiny desk again, notebook open, pen ready. But this time I didn't write feelings. I wrote a list, a new kind of list. Not of what I'd done for others, but what I would now do for myself. First, call the bank. Stop the auto transfer to Jacob's account. Second, cancel the shared credit card I'd co-signed when Diana forgot hers had maxed out. Third, contact my attorney. Revoke the durable power of attorney I'd given Jacob in case anything ever happened. Fourth, rewrite my will. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted clarity. I wouldn't leave things to people who only remembered me when the check cleared. I wouldn't let Sophie become a story they told when they needed to pretend they were kind. I would make it legally clear, unmistakably, so who stood beside me when I had nothing but motel coffee and dignity left? Sophie hadn't asked for anything. She hadn't made speeches. She hadn't cried or begged. She simply showed up, in the dark, with honesty in her voice, and no camera on. That was love. So she would be the one to receive what was mine to give. Not because she demanded it, but because she deserved it. Not for being perfect, but for being present. By the time she stirred awake, I had already made 3 calls. The last number dialed was for Mr. Harlan, my lawyer since before Jacob graduated college. He picked up on the second ring. Evelyn. You all right? I'm ready to make some changes, I said. And I want them in writing. He paused. Then slowly, I'll come to you. We'll go over it line by line. When I hung up, Sophie was sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "You okay, Grandma?" she asked. I turned to her with a small smile. "More than okay, darling. I'm just clearing the fog." Fog. The kind people create when they don't want you to see clearly. I've been walking through it for years. Now I see the road. She didn't fully understand, but she nodded anyway, because she could feel the shift. That afternoon, I walked into the branch I'd used for 20 years. The teller looked up, recognized me immediately. "Mrs. Marlowe here for your usual transfer?" I shook my head. "No, I'm here to cancel it." A pause. She glanced down. "Oh, okay. Would you like to set up a new one?" "No," I said. "I'd like to stop sending money to people who don't show up for me." Her face shifted surprise, then understanding. She didn't ask more. She just nodded. In the lawyer's office, I read every sentence. When I got to the clause about beneficiaries, I stopped. Everything I said. House car insurance, the silver set, goes to Sophie. Mr. Harlan blinked. "You're sure she's the only one who didn't need proof of ownership to treat me like I still mattered?" I signed the papers with a steady hand. No drama, no announcement, no letter sent to Jacob or Diana. They wouldn't know until someday, and by then I'd be gone. But Sophie would know now, and I think that matters more. That evening back in the motel room, I told her gently. "I made some changes," I said. She looked up from her book. "Okay, I rewrote my will." Her mouth parted slightly. "Why? Because I don't want what I built to go to people who only smiled when the camera was on." She stayed quiet, then whispered, "You don't have to do that for me." I didn't. I looked at her. I did it for me. She nodded slowly. "I know what you're trying to say, Grandma," she said softly. "And I'll try to be the kind of person you're proud of." "You already are," I said. "The only thing you ever needed to do was show up." We sat together in silence for a moment. Then Sophie reached for my hand. "Is it okay if I stay one more night?" I smiled. "I was hoping you would." The first voicemail came the day after I made everything official. Jacob's voice, cracked, careful. "Mom, hey, Diana told me Sophie left the house. She didn't say much. Just that you were in town." A pause. We didn't know. If you had told us, if we'd known you were flying in, we would have picked you up. This is all just a lot right now. Call me okay." I didn't. A second message followed the next morning. Longer. He sounded more agitated. "Look, I don't know what Sophie told you, but you're still my mother. And we deserve a conversation, at least that. We deserve to explain. That word. Deserve. What a funny thing. He thought he deserved an explanation, but had never once offered one himself. He had shown up to my house empty-handed for 10 straight Mother's Days, not once asking if I needed anything if the roof still leaked. He had withdrawn money from the account I funded. Money I earned in the back office of a flower shop in a town where no one ever left. He had skipped my birthday 2 years in a row, but made sure to tag me in his anniversary post with Diana. And now he wanted to talk. I listened to the message. Twice. Then I deleted it. Not out of spite. Not as revenge. But because I no longer owed him space in my mind. That's the thing about forgiveness. Everyone expects it to be loud, dramatic, church quiet, clean. But real forgiveness isn't always offered like communion. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a locked gate that says, "No longer welcome." Not because I hate you, but because I love myself. Later that week, a letter arrived at the motel. No return address. I knew the handwriting. Diana's. Inside a folded card. The kind you buy in a rush. No real sentiment, just a floral print and the word family in cheap gold foil. The message inside said, "You've hurt Jacob deeply. Please call before this goes too far. Sophie is still a child. Don't pull her into this." I stared at it for a full minute, not because I was angry, but because I truly realized, that they still didn't see me. They saw a role, a resource, a fixture. They saw a woman who would always say yes because she always had. But that woman no longer lived at this address. I folded the card, slipped it back into the envelope, walked it out to the motel dumpster, and dropped it in soft and final. That night, as I sat across from Sophie, she noticed I was quieter than usual. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm peaceful," I said. And people confuse that with being cold. She tilted her head. "Is it okay that you didn't answer? You mean Jacob's calls?" She nodded. "I didn't ignore him to punish him," I said. "I just stopped volunteering for pain." She was silent for a moment. Then, "But don't people deserve a second chance?" Ah, there it was. The seed of guilt they plant early, in daughters and granddaughters. The idea that to set boundaries is to be unkind, that to say enough is an act of violence. I took her hand. "Sophie, second chances belong to people who knew they messed up and show up with clean hands." Her brow furrowed. Clean hands. They don't demand, don't twist, don't spin the story. They just come, quietly, honestly, asking, not expecting. I let that sit, then added, "Your father hasn't done that, and your mother never will." Sophie looked down. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What if, when I grow up, I turn out like them?" My heart clenched, not out of fear, but from the sheer ache of knowing she already wondered if she had to fight to not become them. I cupped her cheek. "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because you called me. You didn't wait for permission. You didn't need proof. You saw something was wrong, and you came toward it, not away." She blinked fast, and I saw the shimmer of tears. "You showed up, baby. That's all love ever really is." The next morning, I wrote one more letter, not to Jacob, not to Diana, but to myself. I did not close the door to be cruel. I closed it because no one else remembered to. Let them say what they want. Let them spin it in living rooms and with therapists and around future holiday tables. Let them tell people I was difficult. Let them lie if they must. I didn't shut them out. I simply stopped standing outside the house, begging to be let back in. And in doing so, I found my home. The knock came at 10:42 a.m. Not frantic, not polite, just measured. I knew it was her before I even opened the door. Diana always knocked like someone who never had to wait long for anything. I didn't flinch. I didn't rush. I made sure the kettle had finished boiling. Let the water steep with the peppermint. Let the clock tick twice. Then I opened the door. She stood there, coat sharp, scarf looped just right. She had makeup on, though, lighter than usual, probably meant to say, "I'm here for peace," without sacrificing image. "Evelyn," she said, voice cool as a mid-tier apology. "Diana." I stepped aside, not as invitation, just practicality. She came in like someone entering a conference room, bag clutched like a file, eyes scanning. Her gaze landed on the kitchen table. 2 cups, only one steaming. I sat, poured tea into my own. Didn't offer her any. She noticed. She didn't mention it. "I'll get to the point," she said after a pause. "We're worried. About Sophie. About you." I stirred my tea once. Clink. Silence. She left the house in the middle of the night. Jacob says she's not answering him. That's not normal. "No," I said quietly. Neither is leaving your mother-in-law at an airport on Christmas Eve. She blinked, quickly masked it. I think there's been a misunderstanding, she said. We thought plans had changed. Jacob assumed, don't I interrupted soft but sharp. Don't send him in here through your mouth. A silence dropped like glass. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. I'm here because we care, she said, tone tightening. You've been acting erratically, cutting off support, changing legal documents. It feels reactive. There it was, the real reason. Not Sophie, not concern. Assets. My name on papers they never read, only cashed. I set my cup down. Carefully. You know, Diana, I said real concern doesn't show up in structured sentences. It shows up in presence. She bristled. We were busy. You could have said something. I looked her straight in the eye. I did. I booked the flight. I packed my bag. I stood at gate 4 for 47 minutes. That was me saying something. She shifted in her seat. You're being unfair. No, I said. I'm being honest. You're just not used to hearing it in a calm voice. Diana crossed her arms. We've supported you. Jacob's transferred funds every month. I've driven the kids to visit. I nodded. Yes, once last Easter, for 2 hours. After I made lunch and cleaned the kitchen alone. She rolled her eyes. This bitterness doesn't suit you. I leaned back. It's not bitterness. It's boundaries. You're confusing the two because you've never seen me use them. Another pause. A flicker in her expression, something close to unease. Then she adjusted her tone. Polished it. If this is about Sophie, she said, we'll talk to her. She's young, impressionable, maybe too caught up in things she doesn't understand. She understands plenty, I said, like how to recognize being lied to. She called me, not you. Diana's face hardened. You're creating a rift. No, I said quietly. I'm naming the one you've built for years and blamed me for falling into. The words landed like snow on hot pavement. Quiet, then gone. But you felt the steam. Diana glanced toward the door, stiffened her posture. Well, she said, rising. I tried. No, I corrected gently. You came to check if the money still came with me. It doesn't. She didn't reply, didn't ask for a hug, didn't reach for reconciliation. She just walked to the door. Hand on the knob, she paused. You're going to regret cutting family out. I smiled, sad but solid. I didn't cut anyone out. I just stopped bleeding for people who kept pretending it was paint. The door clicked shut, and for the first time in decades, the house felt clean. Not just in space, but in energy. No ghost of obligation. No scent of compromise. Just the lingering hint of peppermint. And peace. 2 days after Diana's visit, it was Jacob. He didn't call. He didn't text. He just showed up. I heard the car door close outside, the weight of his footsteps on the porch, the hesitation before the knock like he was trying to decide which version of himself to bring. I opened the door before he could knock. He looked older than I remembered. Not in the gray hair way, in the too many excuses kind of way. The lines on his face didn't come from smiling. Mom, he said. Can I come in? I stepped aside. You can sit. That's different. He blinked, then nodded slowly. Walked in like a man walking into a church after a long time away, unsure of whether he's welcome or just tolerated. He sat, looked around, took in the room, the quiet. You're really here, he said. I mean, I wasn't sure. I was always really here, Jacob, I said, even when no one looked. He exhaled. I didn't know you came. That you were at the airport? No, I asked, raising an eyebrow. You didn't check your phone. Diana, usually handles the texts. And the calendar. I tilted my head. And the forgetting. He flinched, but only a little. I'm not here to fight, he said. I'm here to talk. Then talk. He cleared his throat. Sophie's upset. She's saying things that aren't fair. Like, that we left you on purpose. That we lied. That we didn't care. Did you? He hesitated. I thought you weren't coming. Diana said. I held up a hand. Stop outsourcing your conscience to your wife, Jacob. You're 42. When your mother books a flight and stands at a gate for nearly an hour, she shouldn't have to file a claim to be noticed. He looked down. It wasn't meant to hurt you, but it did. He nodded. I know. I let the silence settle like dust. Thick, unavoidable. Then softly I said I didn't come back for an apology. He looked up, hopeful. You didn't. No. I came back to end the performance. He blinked. What performance? The one where I keep showing up and you keep pretending I'm welcome. The one where I bring cookies and gifts and you bring excuses. That's not fair. Neither is an empty chair and a full Facebook post. He winced. That post, Diana wrote it. I know I said. But you liked it. He swallowed. I didn't mean Jacob, I said, leaning forward. Intent doesn't warm chairs. It doesn't answer texts. It doesn't hug you at the arrivals gate. Presence does. He opened his mouth, closed it. Then finally, what do you want from me? There it was, the question, the one they always ask when kindness is no longer automatic. I took a slow breath. I don't want anything I said. Not anymore. He stared. I'm not angry, I continued. I'm not even surprised. I just stopped pretending that table was ever meant for me. He looked lost. You're my mother, and that used to mean something. Silence again. I didn't fill it. I let him sit with it. Eventually, he stood. Are you really cutting us off? I shook my head. No, I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm just not carrying anyone anymore. He looked at me like he wanted to cry but didn't know how. I don't know what to say, he whispered. You don't have to say anything, I replied. Just remember what silence feels like, because that's what you gave me. He turned, walked to the door, hand on the knob, then soft and broken. Do you still love me? I stood, walked to the counter, picked up a teacup and washed it slowly. Without turning around, I answered, Love doesn't mean I let you eat from a table you refused to set for me. He didn't respond. The door clicked shut, and this time, I didn't watch him go. Because for once, I wasn't the one leaving empty. I had said everything, not with screams, not with threats, just truth, steady, clear, and finally mine. She arrived around noon. No text, no warning, just a knock, 2 soft taps, like punctuation at the end of a question she hadn't formed yet. I opened the door to find her standing there, wrapped in a plaid coat far too big for her small frame. In one hand, she clutched a hardcover novel. In the other, a bag of dried pasta and a tin of crushed tomatoes. Hi, she said, like maybe she wasn't sure if she still had the right. Come in, I whispered. You don't have to ask. We boiled water together. She set the table. I grated cheese. No one raised their voice. No one asked, why didn't you? There was just the sound of a kettle, the soft boil of water, and the gentle clink of plates. We made pasta with too much garlic, just how she liked it. Then we sat and played checkers. She beat me twice. I won the 3rd round. We didn't keep score. Afterward, she opened the book. Can I read out loud? Of course. So she did. Her voice carried across the room, clear, steady, still soft with youth, but anchored by something older. I don't remember the plot. but I remember the sound of her voice. At some point, I stood up and reached for the photo album, the one I hadn't opened in years. I placed it on the table between us. She paused, surprised. "Is this?" I nodded. She flipped it open gently. There was a photo of her at 5 years old, holding a plastic microphone, singing in the backyard. "You kept this." "Of course I did." She kept flipping birthdays, Christmases, afternoons in the garden with sticky fingers and tangled hair. Then she stopped at a picture of me much younger, sitting on the floor, arms full of laundry, Jacob's little sock still half folded in my hand. "You looked tired," she whispered. "I was," I said, but I didn't know it then. She touched the edge of the photo. "You did so much." I shrugged. "It's not about what I did. It's about who remembered." She looked up at me, eyes glassy, but brave. "I remember," she said. That was enough. After Sophie left, book tucked under her arm, leftover pasta in a container, I lit a single candle. Not because it was Christmas, but because I needed something soft, something warm. I sat at the table, 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for the woman I used to be, the one who waited, who packed gifts in bubble wrap, who hoped for phone calls that didn't come. She had done her best. She had survived birthdays, forgotten favors, assumed sacrifices unseen. She had smiled at tables where no one made room for her plate. She had dried tears with sleeves, cooked through silence, swallowed shame with casserole. And tonight, I was letting her go. Not in anger, in honor. I sipped my tea, looked at the flicker of the candlelight. Then I reached for my journal and wrote my final note of the year I was not abandoned. I was returned to myself. I looked around the little house. No tinsel, no garland, just peace. The kind you don't wrap in bows, but in boundaries. The kind that doesn't arrive in carols, but in clarity. They may never come back. They may twist the story in their telling, but I will not. I have my version. And in it, I stood up. I walked away from the table where I was always last to be served. I didn't throw the plate. I didn't scream. I simply chose not to sit down again. I lit the candle. I poured the tea. And I left room only for the people who make space in return. My Christmas didn't look like theirs, but for the first time, it looked like mine. Before we say goodbye, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Is it a quiet morning with a warm cup of coffee, or a late night where stories like this keep you company? Let us know in the comments. We read everyone with gratitude. And if this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel. Not just to hear more stories like this, but to be part of a community that still believes in kindness, healing, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Wherever you are, we hope you carry this story with you, and remember, sometimes the miracle doesn't knock on your door. It waits quietly until you're ready to open your heart. Take care, and we'll see you in the next story.